Welcome to the Karma Verdict. Let us get started with today's story. My wife told me she was spending Christmas with her ex and my stepdaughter. She needs her real father. If you are not happy, get a divorce. I did not argue. I accepted that transfer to Japan that I had been refusing for years. A week later, she came home and called me in a panic. My name is Brian Whitaker, and the night my wife told me she was taking my stepdaughter to spend Christmas with her ex-husband, she slammed the kitchen door so hard the windows rattled. She pointed a red-painted finger at me and declared, clear as a church bell, Haley needs her real father. If you do not like it, get a divorce. I did not argue. I wiped the sweat from my hands, opened my old laptop on the kitchen table, and finally accepted the transfer to Japan that I had been refusing for years. A week later, she came back in a panic on the porch of my house, banging on the door as if she still owned it. At the time, she really thought she owned everything. It did not start with the yelling. It started like an ordinary Great Tuesday in Millbrook, Wisconsin. The road was covered in salt to melt the ice. People were hunched over in their coats, just trying to survive another workday in December. I had put in a full day at the local factory. I stayed late to fix a motor that kept buzzing, and I stopped by the grocery store for milk and a rotisserie chicken. When I walked into the house, it smelled of cinnamon and bread. The little artificial tree in the corner was already lit up with colored lights flashing at the front window. That was Haley's touch. She was 10 years old and loved Christmas as if it were a full-time job. She came sliding down the hallway in her socks. Papa Brian, did you fix the roof of the dollhouse? She asked. I held up the little wooden dollhouse I had been working on in the basement. Diane had found it damaged at a garage sale. I had spent 3 evenings sanding it and gluing it back together after work. Here it is, I said. Haley leaned on the little pink roof with both hands. It did not budge. I told Mommy you could fix it, she said proudly. You always fix everything. I wish that were true. In the kitchen, Diane stood at the stove with her back to me, stirring a pot of sauce. Her shoulders were tense. I had learned over the years that you could read her mood just by the height of her shoulders. Hey, I said, putting the milk in the fridge. We got the Christmas bonus today. It is not huge, but it will cover the bike and a little more. She did not look up. We need to talk, she said. Those 4 words never bode well. All right, I answered cautiously. About what? She turned off the burner, put down the spoon, and turned toward me. She was wearing a nice blouse, her lipstick still perfect from her workday. It struck me that she was dressing up more for someone else than for a night at home. I talked to Scott, she said. Scott, her ex-husband, the man who missed birthdays and parent-teacher conferences, but who always had an excuse. About what? I asked, though my stomach was already starting to tie itself in knots. About Christmas, she replied as if it were obvious. He invited us to the cabin this year. He wants to make up for lost time with Haley. She needs her real father in her life. Brian, please. We already have plans, I said. The Christmas service at church, the potluck dinner with your parents. She interrupted me with a small wave of her hand. We have habits, she said, not plans. You and your buddies at church, your folding chairs. Haley deserves a real Christmas with a big cabin, a real tree, and her real father. She hammered that word like a mallet. I let that sink in for a moment. I thought I was part of it, I said. I am the one who has been here. The one who reads her stories, who takes her to the dentist, who shows up at school, her mouth twisted. And you are the stepfather, she said flatly. Do not take it personally. You knew what you were getting into. Scott is her biological father. She needs that connection. Maybe if you were not so simple about everything, you would understand. And something small and quiet broke in my chest. Not a dramatic crack, more like an old wooden board finally giving way. And where do I fit into all this? I asked. She shrugged. You do not. Not this time. We are going to the cabin for a week. We leave on the 23rd. If you cannot handle it, you can ask for a divorce or I will. She said it as if she were reading a line from a script she had rehearsed all afternoon. From the living room, Haley called out, Mom, are we watching the Christmas movie tonight? Diane did not answer. Her eyes stayed on me, waiting for a reaction. I had given her plenty over the years. Begging, arguing, explaining myself like a teenager caught breaking curfew. This time, I just stood there. I thought about the email from Tokyo sitting flagged in my inbox. Final offer. Plant maintenance supervisor, Japan. I had turned it down 3 times because Diane did not want to leave Wisconsin, her living room, or her parents' house 10 minutes away. I thought about my dad, who had worked 35 years in the same factory, telling me, Do not let anyone treat you like you are lucky just to be in the room. I see, I said. My voice was calmer than I felt. When did you tell Haley? Yesterday, she replied. She is excited. She wants to see the snow at the cabin. Scott is picking us up. Of course he was. All right, I said. I will not get in your way. Diane blinked. That was not the response she was expecting. That is it? She demanded. You are not going to yell, call me selfish? Threaten to call a lawyer? I shook my head. No, I said. Not tonight. She huffed and turned back to the stove, muttering something under her breath about me being spineless. I walked out of the kitchen, past the smell of sauce and the pile of unopened mail on the counter, and went into the living room. Haley had lined up the little wooden family in front of the dollhouse. The father figure was closest to the door. Movie time? I asked. She smiled. Can we watch the black and white one with the angel again? It is a wonderful life, I said. Yeah, we can do that. She snuggled under my arm with a blanket, her head on my shoulder. On the screen, George Bailey's whole life was unfolding before him. All the little sacrifices and quiet moments that no one else seemed to notice. I was watching, but I was thinking about all the times I had said no to that overseas job. All the nights I had fixed things around this house, thinking we were building something together. Halfway through, Haley fell asleep. I carried her to bed, pulled the quilt up under her chin, and stood there for a minute listening to her steady breathing. Downstairs, the house felt different, empty in a way, even with Diane in the bedroom and the television still murmuring. I sat down at the kitchen table. I pulled my laptop toward me and opened the Tokyo email. Hi Hiroshi. I typed. If the position is still available, I would like to accept it. The cursor blinked at the end of the sentence. I read it twice, heard my dad's voice again, and clicked send. The little swoosh of the email going out sounded louder than it should have in that small kitchen. I did not pack my bags that night. I did not leave a note. I just sat there for a while, listening to the heater kick on and the ice maker start up. The ordinary sounds of a house that suddenly was not really mine anymore. I did not know it yet, but that little click of the send button was the first step toward the day Diane would stand before a judge, red-faced and furious as the truth finally caught up to her. When the plane landed at Narita, I felt something I had not felt in years. Calm, not exactly peace. More like the calm after a storm when the air still smells like rain and you are not sure if it is really over. Tokyo was bright, even at night, full of moving lights, but none of it belonged to me. I moved into a modest apartment the company had arranged. A tiny kitchen, a narrow single bed, and a window overlooking a street where businessmen hurried by with black umbrellas. The next morning, I walked to the factory with my supervisor, a man named Hiroshi Tanaka. Gentle, always smiling politely. He bowed slightly as he introduced me to the team. They bowed back out of respect. Simple, automatic, no strings attached. It felt strange after so many years of walking on eggshells at home. People here work hard, Hiroshi said as we put on our safety gear. But we take care of each other. You will fit in. I nodded. But the truth is, I felt like a ghost drifting into someone else's life. During my first week, I kept checking my phone. No message from Diane, which did not surprise me. She could go weeks pretending I did not exist if it suited her. But Haley, I was waiting for something, a question, a photo, anything. So, I sent the first message. Hi, sweetheart. I hope you are having fun. I am in Japan now. I miss you. No answer. I tried again a day later. I sent you a little gift. It will probably take a week to get there. I love you. Still nothing. A few nights later, I bought a little lucky charm at a convenience store. A small wooden fox, a symbol of protection. I wrapped it up and sent it to Millbrook. It cost more than expected, but I did not care. Walking back to the apartment, I passed a family, father, mother, daughter, laughing as the little girl held their hands and jumped over every crack in the sidewalk. I stopped for a moment to watch them disappear around the corner. That is when the guilt hit me. The heavy kind that sits on your chest like someone pressing a hand against you. Had I abandoned Haley? Was I really any better than Scott? Disappearing when things got tough? I tried to push it away, telling myself I needed time, space, clarity. But guilt has a way of seeping in like winter drafts through old windows. Every night, I checked my emails and every night it was empty. One Saturday, I met up with a young coworker named Yudo Nakamura for ramen. He saw me checking my phone over and over. Are you expecting someone? He asked. I hesitated. My daughter. Or my stepdaughter. He nodded. Complicated. You could say that. He watched me with the same quiet patience I had seen at the factory. Family matters are never simple, he said softly. But the truth always reveals itself eventually. I did not know then just how right he was. The turning point came the following Tuesday. I was sitting on the balcony of my apartment. There was a post from a neighbor in Millbrook. A photo. Diane and Haley in front of a big snow-covered cabin. She was wearing a red sweater that I recognized because I had bought it for her last year for Christmas. And next to her, Scott, her ex-husband, wearing my Christmas sweater. The old green one with the stitched pine tree that Haley loved because she said it looked cheerful. They all looked happy. A picture-perfect family. Family Christmas at the cabin. The caption read, with 2 heart emojis. I stared at that photo until my food got cold. Something was stinging me. Not just jealousy. Not just betrayal. It was the realization that she had looked me in the eyes, told me Haley needed her real father, and then slipped right into the life she had always wanted without me. I zoomed in on the photo, and that is when the second blow hit me. Haley was not smiling. Not a real smile. Not the crinkling of the eyes she always gave me. She looked confused, a little lost, like a kid who had been told to stand still for a picture she did not want to take. That did something to me. It broke something and fixed something all at the same time. I closed Facebook and rubbed my face with both hands. I felt the old guilt turning into something else. Determination. But the worst was yet to come. 2 days later, I was in the break room when Udo walked in with his phone. Hey Brian, he said hesitantly, is your last name Whitaker? Yeah, I said slowly. He turned his screen toward me. He had found a legal notice posted on a public county website. A divorce petition filed by Diane Whitaker. Reason, abandonment. Date, 3 days after I left for Japan. My chest hollowed out. She says you left with no intention of returning, Udo said softly, and that the house and all the assets should go to her. I pointed at the screen. She knew I was taking the job, I muttered. She saw me send the email. She practically pushed me out the door. Udo nodded slowly. Sometimes people choose lies when the truth is inconvenient. I collapsed into the chair next to me. She was not just happy without me. She was trying to erase me completely. I opened my app again. Nothing from Haley. Nothing from anyone. My phone vibrated. A notification from the tracking app. The lucky charm I had sent Haley had been delivered 2 days earlier. No answer. Of course not. Diane must have intercepted it. For the first time, I felt anger. Not the hot, screaming kind, but the cold, deliberate kind that settles low and deep. I looked out the window at the narrow street below. Snow had started to fall, soft and quiet. Tokyo was bustling as always, but inside me, a kind of clarity was forming. I was not going back to Millbrook to fix my marriage. I was going back to save a little girl who deserved the truth and to make sure her mother finally faced it. I booked my flight back that night. I landed back in Wisconsin on a cold, windy morning, the kind where the air bites your cheeks the second you step out of the airport doors. The regional airport was quiet. Just a few families in boots and puffy coats dragging luggage over the dirty snow. No one was there to greet me. That was fine. I was not ready to be seen anyway. I had planned ahead and booked a small room at the local VFW hall on Main Street. It was not fancy. Just a bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the parking lot. But it felt solid, honest, like the kind of place you stay when you have work to do. I set my bag down and stood there for a moment, breathing in the smell of old wood and coffee that had been brewing since sunrise. A veteran with a crew cut gave me a nod in the hallway. Have not seen you in a while, Brian, he said. Everything okay? Getting there, I replied. I just need a few days to sort some things out. He gave me that look older men give each other when they know something has gone wrong, but are decent enough not to pry. That afternoon, I drove past my old house. The driveway was empty. The Christmas wreath was still on the door, tilted a little to the side. At the front window, the little artificial tree was still flashing its colored lights. For a moment, it took everything I had not to park the truck, walk up the steps, and knock. Instead, I kept driving. I needed information before I needed a confrontation. My first stop was at the Millbrook Community Bank. The teller, a woman named Julie who had known me for years, blinked when she saw me. Brian, I thought you moved overseas. Not permanently, I said. She lowered her voice. Your wife came in here trying to withdraw all the joint money. She threw a fit when we told her she could not without your signature. She wanted to speak to the manager, then the board. We had to ask her to leave. I figured as much, I said. Did she say why? He asked. Julie sighed. She said you abandoned the family and that she needed the funds for emergency expenses. But you know the rules. I nodded. Yeah, I know how it works. She slid me a printout of the last 3 months of activity. My transactions on one page, her withdrawal attempts on the other. Thanks, Julie, I said. Take care of yourself. You too. You look tired. Working on it. My next stop was the local supermarket. I was not hungry, but I needed to see the place where half the town gathered, where rumors gained momentum. I pushed a cart slowly down the fresh produce aisle, listening. People in small towns do not whisper as quietly as they think. Ran off with someone to Japan. Poor Diane, left with the kid and all his bills, just like her first husband. She sure knows how to pick them. I turned the corner and almost bumped into the cashier, a woman named Patty who had rung up my groceries 1,000 times. Her eyes widened. Lord? Brian. So she was lying. She shook her head. She told us you took off with a woman half your age after blowing the bonus on yourself. I exhaled slowly. Not true. I figured as much. She crossed her arms. You always seem steady to me. She came in here 3 times this week, complaining about everything. I finally stopped asking how she was doing. I appreciated that more than I said. Thanks, Patty. She is going to throw a fit when she realizes you are back. Be careful, she said. That night, I sat on the bed at the VFW hall with all the receipts and evidence spread out in front of me. Financial records, screenshots, email copies. The printout of the divorce petition with the word abandonment, staring at me like an accusation. But what hit me the hardest was not a legal document. It was the drawing. The one Haley had made for me before she left. The picture of us holding hands next to a Christmas tree. I had kept it in my bag. I laid it on the bed and just looked at it. Did she think I left because of her? Did she think I did not want to be her dad anymore? That thought almost knocked the wind out of me. I called the school the next morning. The office transferred me to the counselor, a woman named Mrs. Fletcher. Brian, she said, relieved. I am so glad to hear from you. Have you talked to Haley? I asked. Yes. She is confused. That word again. She asked where you went. I told her that sometimes adults have complicated things to sort out, but that you love her. She cried. She said her mom told her you chose Japan over her. My grip tightened around the phone. She really said that? Yes. I am sorry, Brian. Nausea and anger mixed in my throat. Thank you, I said quietly. That means more than you know. And when the call ended, I sat for a long time staring at the floor. That was the moment the doubt evaporated. Whatever guilt I had felt about leaving, it was gone. I had not failed Haley. Diane had lied to her, and I was not going to let that slide. I spent the next 2 days building my case. My old friend Jason Riley, who I had known since high school, was now a lawyer working out of a small office behind the local gas station. He met me during his lunch break, looked through my binder, and let out a low whistle. She really dug herself a hole, he said. Trying to sell the house? Filing for abandonment 3 days after you left? Blocking your contact with Haley? A judge will not like any of this. So what do I do? You file a response, he said, and you show up at the hearing. Her lawyer will expect you to be out of the country. That is your advantage. Will it be enough to protect Haley? He nodded. If what you told me is true, and it looks like it is, it will go in your favor. He closed the binder and handed it back to me. Stay calm, Brian. Do not confront her. Let the court handle it. That was the hardest part. Staying calm. That night, I sat in the VFW hall parking lot looking at the courthouse across the river. The snow was starting to fall again. Big flakes drifting through the streetlights. I thought about the little girl sleeping somewhere in town, probably hugging that stuffed fox I had won for her at the county fair 2 summers ago. I thought about how she looked in the cabin photo. Not smiling, not really. I made my decision. I was not coming back to win back a marriage. I was coming back to win back a daughter. 2 mornings later, wearing my best shirt and my old brown Carhartt jacket, I walked up the courthouse steps with a binder under my arm. I reached the top, pulled open the heavy glass door, and stepped inside. The Millbrook County Courthouse always felt a little intimidating, even on a warm day. But that morning, with the low gray sky and the biting wind coming off the river, it felt like walking onto a battlefield. My boots echoed on the tiles as I walked down the long hallway toward the courtroom. Jason, my lawyer, was already there, sitting on a bench outside with a stack of papers on his lap. When he saw me, he stood up and shook my hand firmly. Ready? He asked. As ready as possible. He nodded to the court clerk, Mr. Davidson. Diane is not here yet. She probably thinks you were still in Japan. That will play in our favor. We walked into the courtroom. The heat was on too high, and the old radiators were hissing in the corners. A few people were sitting on the benches. The usual mix of locals dealing with traffic tickets, custody disputes, and property disagreements. Small-town courtrooms are never empty. I sat down at the defendant's table. The judge was not there yet. Neither was Diane. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe. My hands rested on the binder. My evidence, my truth. It felt heavier than it looked. The door opened behind me. Heels clicked on the floor. Diane walked in, wearing a long red wool coat with a fur-trimmed collar and boots that looked new, probably a Christmas gift to herself. Her hair was curled, makeup perfect, lips bright like a warning signal. Right behind her was her lawyer, a young guy in an expensive suit with a smug smile plastered on his face. Diane swept the room with a confident look until her eyes landed on me. She froze. It was only for a second, but I saw everything I needed to see in that moment. Shock, irritation, and a flash of panic that she tried to smother under a tight smile. Well, she said loudly enough for the people around to hear, "Look who finally decided to show up." I did not answer. I did not need to. Jason leaned toward me. "Do not take the bait. Let her talk." The judge walked in, a strict woman with steel gray hair and glasses perched low on her nose. Everyone stood up. When we sat back down, she flipped through a file. Case number 241781. Whitaker versus Whitaker. Divorce and custody matters. Her eyes flicked from one table to the other. "Mr. Whitaker, I was not expecting you. The petitioner's filing stated you had left the country indefinitely." Diane crossed her hands effectively. "Your Honor, that is what I believed. He abandoned us." Jason stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. My client did not abandon anyone." The judge held up a hand. "We will get to that." Then she looked at me. "Mr. Whitaker, since you are present, the court will hear your side." Diane's lawyer chimed in. "Your Honor, the petitioner maintains that." But the judge cut him off. "Not yet, Mr. Harrington. Sit down." He did. The judge turned to me again. "Mr. Whitaker, proceed." I stood up. My palms were sweating, but my voice remained steady. "I left the country because my wife told me that she and Haley were spending Christmas with her ex-husband. She told me Haley needed her real father, and that if I did not like it, I could ask for a divorce." A murmur rippled through the room. I continued. "I accepted a job transfer to Japan after having turned it down several times for the sake of this family. I sent messages and gifts to Haley. Nothing reached her. I found out later that they had been blocked or intercepted. I opened the binder and slid a stack of printed emails onto the table. These are timestamps and tracking confirmations. And these, I added another set of papers, are the petitioner's attempts to withdraw all the funds from our joint account and to sell the marital home without my signature." Diane's face flushed. "That is not how it happened," she stammered. "Mrs. Whitaker," the judge said sharply, "you will get your turn." Jason handed me another document. I passed it forward. "And this is the divorce petition," I said, "filed 3 days after my departure, alleging abandonment." The judge studied the papers with a disapproving frown. I stepped back. "Your Honor, I did not abandon my family. I was pushed out and then replaced." Diane slammed her hands on the table. "Oh, please, he is lying. He left with a woman in Japan. Ask anyone." The judge looked slightly amused. "Really?" Before Diane's lawyer could stop her, she said, "Yes. Ask the people at the supermarket. They know." That was the opening Jason had been waiting for. "Funny you should say that," he said, standing up. "Your Honor, we have a witness sitting in the back." Everyone turned his Patty. The cashier from the local supermarket stood up, clutching her purse. The judge nodded. "Ma'am, step forward." Patty approached, cleared her throat, and said simply, "Your Honor, I have known Brian and Diane for years." Diane told everyone that Brian ran off with a younger woman and left her with all the bills. But that did not seem right to me. Well, seeing him here proved she was not telling the truth. A muffled whisper swept through the benches. Diane's jaw clenched. "She does not know anything," she snapped, "but the damage was done." The judge leaned back, hands clasped. "Mrs. Whitaker, you filed for abandonment 3 days after your husband left for a documented work transfer. You attempted to liquidate assets without proper authorization. You blocked communications between the child and her stepfather, whom she clearly views as a parental figure. Do you understand the severity of this?" Diane opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The judge continued. "Based on the evidence, the court sees a pattern of dishonesty and manipulation. Diane's lawyer tried to salvage the situation. Your Honor, surely we cannot. No, the judge said, we cannot. She signed a document with a sharp stroke of her pen. My ruling is as follows. Temporary primary decision-making authority goes to Mr. Whitaker. Mrs. Whitaker is ordered to cease all attempts to sell the property. The financial misconduct will be reviewed by an auditor. A court-appointed guardian for the child will be assigned to determine the best interests of the child. And Mrs. Whitaker will repay any funds inappropriately withdrawn. Diane's face went from pink to crimson. This is ridiculous. He is not even her real father, she yelled. The judge's eyes hardened. Sometimes real fathers are the ones who stay, Mrs. Whitaker. The court adjourned. The gavel banged. Chairs scraped. People murmured. Diane stormed out with her lawyer chasing after her. And then, something small broke through the noise. Papa Brian. I turned around. Haley was standing right at the doorway with the school counselor behind her. Her eyes were wet, but her smile was the real one. She ran toward me and wrapped her arms around my waist. I knew you did not leave me, she whispered. I could not speak. I just held her, one hand cradling the back of her head as the room emptied around us. That embrace was the moment everything changed. I was not the man who left. I was Dad. For a week after the hearing, the house was quiet in a way it never had been when Diane lived there. Not empty, just peaceful. I had moved back in temporarily under court order. While the court-appointed guardian for the child conducted her evaluation, Haley spent every other night there. And when she was not around, I still caught myself checking the hallway for her little footsteps. That girl had a way of filling a house, even when she was not talking. She hummed while brushing her hair. She tapped her fingers while doing her homework. She whispered to the old wooden dollhouse I had fixed, moving the little family figures into different rooms, as if she were giving them a better life inside miniature walls. The first night she stayed over, she crawled into my bed around 2 o'clock in the morning, did not say a word, just wrapped an arm around my chest as if she were afraid I would disappear. Still here, I whispered in the dark. She nodded against my shoulder and did not let go. The court-appointed guardian for the child arrived that Thursday afternoon, a woman named Laura Bailey in a navy blue coat, clipboard in hand. She inspected the house from top to bottom, taking notes, asking questions. Where does Haley keep her school projects? In the hallway closet, third shelf. Who helps her with her homework? Me, and sometimes Mrs. Fletcher at school. How long has she called you Dad? Since she was 3. Laura paused and studied me with soft, thoughtful eyes. That counts, Brian, she said. More than you think. By the time she left, she had enough evidence to fill a binder of her own. I made dinner that night. Grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Simple, but Haley loved dipping the corners of her sandwich into the soup and declaring it was fancy. She told me about school, her friend Clara's new puppy, and a drawing she was making for the court-appointed guardian for the child. I can draw whatever I want, Haley said. So I am drawing us, you and me, at the Christmas festival, the one with the popcorn machine and the ice sculptures. I swallowed hard. That was a good night. It was the best, she said, smiling big enough to show the gap from her missing front tooth. Moments like that made everything worth it. And then, right at the end of the week, Diane showed up. It was the following Monday morning. Snow had fallen overnight, thick enough to hide the cracks in the driveway. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee when I heard a car door slam hard enough to rattle the window. Then another slam. Then quick footsteps crunching in the snow, then banging, bang, bang. Open this door right now, Diane called out. I set my cup down, took a slow breath, and walked to the front door. When I opened it, a gust of freezing air rushed in, along with the sound of her ragged breathing. Diane stood on the porch, hair disheveled, coat unbuttoned, boots covered in snow. Her eyes were wide, almost frantic. You think you won? She yelled. You think this is over? Diane, I said calmly. You have no legal right to be here. She stepped forward until her boots touched the threshold. That judge humiliated me in front of everyone. You ruined my life. I did not ruin anything. I told the truth. The court did the rest. Her hands clenched into fists. You stole my daughter. She is not something to be stolen, I said, and you know it. For a moment, her face twisted, not in anger, but in something that looked a bit like fear, or maybe realization. Then, just as quickly, she pushed the feeling away. You think you are a hero? She hissed. You are nothing, nothing. Behind her, a vehicle was idling in the driveway. When I looked past her, I realized it was not her usual SUV. It was her ex-husband's truck, and sitting behind the wheel, watching with his arms crossed, was Scott. He did not get out. He did not wave. He did not even look toward her. He just stared straight ahead, stone cold. That is when I knew something had changed. Diane turned and followed my gaze. "You can leave now," she snapped at him. He did not roll down the window. He did not acknowledge her at all. He put the truck in reverse, backed out of the driveway, and drove off without a word. Diane turned back to me, blazing. "He is a coward," she said. "A pathetic coward. You and him, both the same." I held the door. "For your own sake," I said quietly, "you should leave." She let out a strangled cry, pure frustration, pure breakdown, and stomped off into the snow. She slipped once on the ice, caught herself, and kept going, muttering under her breath as she disappeared down the street. I closed the door behind her. The sound was muffled and final. 2 hours later, I opened my emails and found a message waiting for me from Scott Bennett. Subject: about everything. I hesitated, then clicked. "Brian, I am done with Diane. I did not know about the lies. I did not know she filed for abandonment. I did not know she was using Haley to punish you. After the mess in court, I realized I do not want her in my life anymore either. I am sorry for my part in all of this, truly. For what it is worth, you are the only real father Haley has ever had. Scott." I let out a long breath. Not forgiveness, not friendship, but an unexpected truth from an unexpected place. That evening, as the sun set in a soft orange light across the living room, Haley climbed onto the couch with something behind her back. "I made you something," she said. I smiled. "Yeah? What is it?" She pulled out a small wooden figure, one from the family set of the old dollhouse, the little father figure. But now, she had painted the shirt brown like my Carhartt jacket and added little gray spots in the hair. And on the base, in 10-year-old child's handwriting, she had written, "Dad." She placed it in my hand. "Now it looks like you," she said. I had to swallow before I could speak. "It is perfect, sweetheart." She rested her head on my arm. "We can fix everything now, right, Dad?" I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "Yeah," I said softly. "We can." Later that night, after she had fallen asleep, I stood by the living room window and looked outside at the soft glow of the porch light reflecting on the snow. Revenge had not come from screaming or bitterness or getting even. It had come from letting the truth speak louder than the lies, from standing still while the person who tried to break me unraveled under her own choices, from showing up calm, steady, and honest when it mattered most, and from choosing Haley every single time. Comment: I always feel moved when I see stories that highlight the strength in choosing peace. I have learned that holding on to self-respect is the foundation for everything good in life. Setting clear boundaries is not about pushing people away. It is about making room for real kindness and healing. You deserve relationships that honor your worth and your presence. Taking responsibility for your own happiness can feel challenging at first, yet it often leads to the deepest sense of calm. Showing up consistently with quiet love makes all the difference for those who count on us. I hope this encourages you to reflect on where you might choose peace over conflict in your own life. Healing starts with small, honest steps, and I am grateful we can share this journey together. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to stay updated with our upcoming stories. Your support means the world to us.